Local. My name's Ben Mercer, and tonight we're discussing the situation in Egypt. The uprising is, I guess, complete, and now it's a task that will let democracy play it from here. We have a panel of experts in studio, and we were just in the middle of hearing the financial plans for Egypt. A lot of people are nervous about the financial situation. We've got a transition sort of military government in place right now. We've already talked about tourism being a huge source of revenue, which they don't have any right now. I put the call out there to our viewers. Would you travel to Egypt, say in the next 60 days? Would they, I mean, a lot of people want to go see the pyramids, but maybe wait a year, who knows? But I mean, if you want to help the people of Egypt, a trip to Egypt is probably the best thing you can do right now. The number to call, 905-848-LIVE. That's 905-848-5483. We'll pick things right back up with you, sir. Right.
But what I was saying is in relation to the uprising, it wasn't just about poverty, because there was a lot of money in Egypt. It just wasn't distributed fairly. But the people behind this revolution, certainly the spark, a lot of them were not suffering in the same way that the rest of the population was. But perhaps we heard of the story about Wael al-Ghanim, who was a Google executive who played an instrumental role in setting up this the January 25th movement that snowballed into eventually February the 11th with the removal of the president. This is a Google executive who definitely was very rich, very well off, and he stated very clearly in several interviews on television he doesn't need money. He has the best of everything, but he wants his country to be free and his countrymen and women to be free, and he was willing to sacrifice all that he had, family, career, everything, for his country. And I think that's the attitude that pushed a lot of Egyptians onto the streets, that people, regardless of where they belonged in society, be it Muslim, Christian, rich, poor, male, female, all segments went onto the streets because they wanted to be free. The Mubarak regime basically denied them their dignity, and that's why they came out to restore that.
Moving on now, financial future of Egypt. Have they been put back 10 years by this uprising?
Well, I have some concerns about the financial situation in Egypt. First of all, of course, with this situation happening now, a lot of national individuals that used to, or they have investment in Egypt, which is Egyptians, of course, they have to think twice before they go ahead and go on with their business and so on. So this is internally. Externally, because of the political situation right now, with wishy-washy thing that we are not sure of their money invested.
Oh, sir, yeah, it's unstable.
The Americans and anybody else go out in the Far East and invest their money because they are sure that this will be rewarding. Now you go to the Middle East and go to Egypt in this time of volcano, you have to think twice. That would take time for them to taper off. The second thing, of course, is tourism, as we mentioned before. To establish regulations for any investor to come and invest money in Egypt, it will take time. The concern is after the party and everything is over, everybody will go back to home and say, okay, now we need jobs, we need to eat, we need to go.
All those old problems are still there.
All these, and of course, even during this time of 18 days, when you lose $350 million time 20, you can imagine what kind of losses the Egyptian experience. So I think it will take time, unless you have a solid system in the country that will help everybody to come and invest some money there. Of course, it will take time for this to gain its power again. And that is a concern, of course.
But if I may address that economic recovery issue, I think the foundation for any economic growth and recovery would be a solid political system. And Mubarak's system was very corrupt. The country ranked 111th in the world in corruption. So, coming to a full stop, and yes, having massive losses for 18, 20, even 60 days, but then building a foundation, democratic institutions and so on, to have the economic growth jumpstart from there will definitely, on the long run, benefit Egypt much more. I think that the future for Egypt today is much brighter than it was 25 days ago under Mubarak, without a doubt. For one thing, you're going to, for the first time, tap into the potential of the Egyptian people who have been suppressed all this time. And Egyptian people are very creative. They have a lot to offer, and they will finally join the world economy in a free society, hopefully.
Their next step, of course, is to set down a foundation to sort of guide their new democracy? I mean, what sort of constitution will be in place? And I think a lot of people are looking internationally to say, what will Egypt's relationship with Israel be? I mean, all through the region, I mean, you could argue easily the default is to be against Israel. Egypt had many policies friendly with Israel, and obviously they took a lot of flack from other surrounding nations because of that, but they sort of get to hit the reset button on a lot of those issues. Adley, I want to start with you. You are a Coptic.
Yes.
Now, for those who don't know what a Coptic Egyptian is, explain what that is.
Well, Coptic is, by definition, a name for anybody born in Egypt. Coptic is the original people who lived in Egypt, and now they are the people who still believe in Christianity, and there are 12 million people in Egypt. Statistically, which represent approximately
Christian Egyptians,
Christian
essentially.
Egyptians, as simple as that.
You as well, sir.
Yes, I'm Coptic as well. Yes.
The story that we've heard in the build-up to this uprising is that Coptics haven't traditionally been treated very well in Egypt. Is that your experience, your personal experience?
Well, you want me to jump in and make a comment?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Copts in the street, I mean, they are friends with everyone. And I have friends all along my life. And when I lived in Egypt for so many years, all my friends were Muslims and no problem at all. But when it comes to the political system, of course, the Christians were marginalized throughout the system, big time. In the political system, economically, and a lot of other systems that are completely subsided, and they have no presence whatsoever. Even the government and presentation in the political system, they are completely marginalized. They have problems as well when it comes to building churches and institutions and so on. So definitely they have issues. They are not resolved yet. Why it's not resolved is a different issue altogether. But to answer your question, in the street, everybody is a friend of everybody. When it comes to the political system presentation, they are marginalized big time.
But there is one, I want to add something
Absolutely.
to Adley. There is a big issue about how to profile Egyptians in Christians and Muslims by having the religion section in the ID. So my ID as an Egyptian states my name, address, and religion.
Yes.
So this is a sort of profiling, and sort of, I would see it as also a sort of discrimination.
It's definitely profiling, yes.
So one of the demands of the revolution these days is to eliminate or remove this religion section from the Egyptian ID.
Yeah.
This is one of the demands of the majority now. Muslims and Christians, actually, they want to have this removed. The other thing, which has been a joke, actually, there is a law in Egypt that has been used for over 200 years since the Ottoman Empire, which states that no church could be built, revamped, refurbished. Even you cannot fix the washrooms of the church without a written approval from the Sultan in the Ottoman Empire.
Sounds like an intelligent policy. Right? Yeah. Safety problems.
It's called the
Health problems.
Hamayonian law, or Hamayonian law. It has been as old as over 200 years now, and it's still in effect. Again,
Yes.
this is one of the things that shows you how there is discrimination, but it's disguised discrimination.
So for both of you who are Coptics, I mean, is this a wait-and-see approach? We know it was one of the demands of the uprising to have even simple things like not revealing your religious affiliation on ID, but certainly that speaks to deeper issues. I mean, are you guys just holding your breath waiting for that to pan out? Because some are arguing that if we have a firm democracy in Egypt, the majority might rule against a decision like that. We could see all sorts of policies come into place that might not be equal to everybody, because it's majority rule in a democracy.
Yeah, I if I may, the way I view this is freedom can be born on one day or instantly, in fact. But democracy is built over a few years because people have to develop the good understanding, with a proper understanding of democracy. The alphabet of democracy is freedom of speech, expression, and association. Copts must not be treated as waiting for somebody to give them rights. Copts are rights, I mean, they have rights by default. They are not waiting on the sidewalk for somebody to tip or issue a piece of legislation for their own sake. They are 12 million people. They have their own system, they have their own religion, they have their own practice, and so on. They are not waiting for somebody to privilege them by any piece of legislation here or there. They are makers of the system, maker of the constitution, like any individual in the system. So we don't want to sell the idea of being, oh, now what are we going to do with what we're going to do with the Christians in Egypt.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
It's not.
Right. If I may,
Mohammed, we definitely want to get you
right,
sort of
as
the
an
Muslim
Egyptian,
at the table.
Yeah. And what I began with, of course, that he had friends who were absolutely, you know, in Egypt, certainly walking the streets of Cairo, Alexandria, and you can't tell people apart, and people get along, you know, very well. It's a very friendly society. There's no question. However, under the Mubarak regime in particular, there has been a severe deterioration in relations between Muslims and Christians, and certainly between all segments of society. Things have gone downhill in so many ways, and that's a lot of that's part of the reason you've had this revolution. People are seeing Egypt go downhill on so many levels. Even its pillars, such as the cooperation that exists between Christians and Muslims. Now, in terms of economic opportunity, and the ID issue is a big one. Certainly, it caught my attention as I grew up and began to notice that my religion was on the ID, and I find that to be very ludicrous.
I would love to know
but
how
I'll tell
the
you the
ID
explanation.
Works, though, because what if you are, you know, a Christian and you don't believe?
But I'll tell you
nothing.
Right. I'm actually going to address that.
Halfway Christian.
Let me address that issue for you. I'm personally, I think it's ludicrous, and I was just there recently, and I made a comment to somebody there about it because I find it to be unacceptable. One of the explanations is that all Egyptians are visibly the same. There's no visible minority. There's no way to distinguish people apart, and therefore religion is used for that purpose. But I completely reject the concept of needing to distinguish people apart. And in terms of you saying the majority may vote on something that would be against Christian rights, such as
might go the other way, though.
But I have to explain something to you. There's a common misconception in democracies that people think your rights are up for vote.
We are coming up for a break right now. We'll come back with that rights up for vote, because Constitution, everything's up in the air right now. We don't have a lot to go off of right now.
But rights are
You're watching Talk Local. We'll be right back.